2025 is here, and I am calling it the year of firsts. I have a lot of goals for this 2025 hunting season. And on this podcast, I want to share my goals and hopes for this year with you. If this is your first time here, welcome to the EndurHunt podcast. Join me as I share my experiences as an emergent hunter, offer advice on overcome challenges, and pursue your passion for hunting. Thank you for being here. I am Andrew Lakosovic. I went on my very first hunt back in 2018 after I had just gotten out of the Marines. It was an elk mule deer combination hunt in southwestern Montana. And although I did not fill any tags that year, I became hooked on hunting, and I have been pursuing hunting ever since. Whether it is whitetail deer, mule deer, elk, pronghorn, you name it, I probably wanted to hunt it. I've gone out west and I've hunted 7 different states now. And I started this podcast to share my experiences, what I have learned, the lessons, and interviews with other great hunters so that you can hopefully not make the same mistakes we did, learn from our experiences, and get outside. As I mentioned at the start of this podcast, this is 2025 sort of plans and goal setting. I'm calling it the year of firsts, and I'm going to break this podcast into 2 distinct sections. We're going to talk about Tennessee, which is the state where I live, and then Western hunting. But before we dive into that, I still have a tiny little bit of the 2024 season left. I am actually going, as this podcast releases, actually, I should be in Texas hunting. Andrew from the future here, interrupting because there was a slight change. Originally, I recorded this podcast in the very, very beginning of January, and it was meant to come out in the middle of January. Well, since then, I decided to record and release a different podcast first that I thought was more timely, which I called How I Would Start Western Hunting in 2025 with 0 points. It's been pretty popular, so if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. But the reason I'm interrupting is my plans for the end of the 2024 season have changed. When I first recorded this and the episode should have released, I should have gone on 2 different hunts in the state of Texas. The first in South Texas in Maverick County on a friend's ranch. And then the second was meant to be finishing off the whitetail season during the late muzzleloader season with Kerry Beeson of the Salty Yak podcast up at his farm in Milam County. We did have the South Texas hunt, but my wife and I had to call it early and cancel this trip. We were supposed to see some friends, and then we were supposed to go finish off the season with Carrie. Unfortunately, we had to cancel both of those, which is a real bummer. I was very much looking forward to hunting with Carrie, but some things came up with work and life, and we had to head home early. So we did a 16.5-hour drive straight through the night with basically no sleep so that my wife and I could both get back home in time to work the next day on like 4 hours of sleep. It's not all bad, though. I was able to check off an unplanned first for the season. And in line with calling 2025 the year of firsts, I definitely got something for the first time and possibly the last time. So I'll get that right now. All right. I don't know how well you can see this, but I shot an aoudad ewe. I'm trying to keep the microphone good to go. On my buddy's ranch in South Texas, he has a few aoudad, and I've hunted with him a few times. I've never actually seen them before. And we had just came back from the morning deer hunt, and we were basically just cruising around. And he said that if you see any aoudad, you could shoot him because he doesn't want them on the ranch because they destroy his feeders. Well, we saw this group of ewes, and I took my 300 blackout and basically shot at the most mature ewe, and she ran about 20 yards and fell over, and we harvested the meat, and I am in the process of turning it into a Euromount. It is not done. If you're watching the video, you would be able to see that the horns are still moving. That's because they're not bondoed back on yet. But I just finished doing the major processing yesterday, and I just need to let it dry for a few more days. I'm going to bleach it because I really like that natural white look. And then I will basically bondo the horns back on. And then once it's dry, it'll end up in this room somewhere, probably on the wall. I wanted to put it on my desk, but it's kind of too big. It doesn't really fit. But that was an unexpected first and an awesome way to start the season. I'm hoping that Carrie and I will be able to hunt together again soon. But the 2024-2025 season is officially over. So there's nothing I can do with that. If you're listening, Carrie, I'm sorry that I had to cancel. With that, let's go back to early January, when I first recorded this. Now, diving into the meat and potatoes of my 2025 hopes and planning, I want to start with Tennessee because those hunts are actually going to come sooner. Tennessee is an amazing state for the outdoors, whether you want to do hiking, fishing, hunting. There's so much here. It's not bountiful public lands like out west, but there are a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things to do. Now, I'm calling this episode the year of firsts, and this year for me is the year of firsts. And there are three things that I'm hoping that I'll be able to accomplish this year in the state of Tennessee. The first is I want to get my first turkey. The second is first duck. And then third is first public land deer since 2019. Now, I'll start with the deer first because if you're watching this on video, whether that's Spotify or YouTube, you can see that I've got quite a few animals behind me. So over my left shoulder, this deer is a 6-point buck. I think if you use the 1-inch rule, technically it's an 8-point buck, but it's like barely. So I call it a 6-point buck. I shot this buck with my bow November 16th, 2019. And it was my very first deer, and it's my only public land buck that I've ever shot. After the 2019 season in 2020, my wife and I moved from New Jersey to Texas. So I only ever got to hunt one season in New Jersey. I hunted public land while we were in Texas those first 2 years, and I went after it, but I never had a legal deer come within range. The place that I was hunting, you either, depending on the season, the time of the year, you either could not hunt does or you could hunt deer, but they had to have, I think it was a 14-inch spread. And all of the deer I was seeing were either within the ears or it was questionable, and I wasn't willing to take that shot. So I was never able to get a legal deer within bow range on public land in Texas. My last 2 years in Texas, I got lucky and made some friends that had some private land, and I got access to hunting that land. And I was able to take a few deer, bucks, and does on that private land, but it's a different style of hunting. And anyone who knows me knows that I like to suffer, is probably how it is. I like to try things the hard way. I like the grit, the determination, having to figure it out. And that was one of the things that I was really looking forward to with the move to Tennessee was going back to public land, having to grind it out and try and figure it out, working with the pressure, figuring out the deer. And I very much look forward to it. But I got my ass handed to me this year, or I guess last year. I am recording this episode January 5th, and it is the last day of the deer season in Tennessee. I could have hunted this weekend. I did not because I'm going to be traveling a ton in January. And honestly, I made my wife put up with me hunting a bunch. So I wanted to spend this weekend with her. And so I decided my Tennessee deer season is over. I've got Texas to look forward to, but I am also looking forward to getting back after it in Tennessee this year. I'm going to do a lot more scouting. I'm going to do more prep and make sure I go more aggressive during the archery season when the deer are more patternable and I feel like I can get after them before the pressure really sets in and their behaviors change. Now, the other two on the list, turkey and ducks. Turkey is one that I've gone after a few times. So in New Jersey, the spring turkey season, I don't remember if New Jersey has a fall turkey season, but the spring turkey season was a draw and you had to put in for it. And of the time that I was hunting there, I did draw it twice. Those seasons are a week long, and I only ever saw a turkey once in the 2 times that I was able to hunt and had tags. I got a turkey within maybe 100 yards, but the shooting light ended at noon and I ran out of time. He did not come in fast enough. I was never able to take a shot. And in the season after that, I didn't even find a turkey. So I haven't hunted turkeys probably since then. So it's been 4 or 5 years since I've hunted turkeys, I would say. And I've heard that the hunting pressure is really heavy for turkeys, especially during the opening season here. But I want to get after it. I'm going to give it a shot and hope that I can get my first turkey this year. And I'm going to give it full face effort. And then ducks. Ducks are one that I've been very interested in for a few years. And it's been difficult because most of the deer hunters that I've met have no interest in hunting birds of any kind, actually. Like, they don't really have interest in upland hunting. They don't want to do duck hunting. And some of them, it's the amount of work and effort and having all the decoys. And I'll admit, it's a lot. I bought some decoys for myself just now, and they take up space. You have to deal with the limited spots, and it's a very different style of hunting than going after deer. But I just love being outdoors and pursuing all sorts of game. And the idea of adding a more variety to the freezer and the dinner plate that I can source from nature is very exciting to me. So I actually have one more, technically two more opportunities for the 2024-2025 season to get after ducks. In Tennessee, there is a veterans only hunt. There are 2 days, I think it's February 2nd and February 9th, that you can hunt. I'm going to see about hunting one or both of those depending on the weather and what's going on. So there's a chance that I'll be able to get back out there. But if I can't, I'm going to be putting a lot more time and effort into hunting ducks in the 2025-2026 season. So hopefully with my new friend Noah, who I met, I can't remember if I've talked about him or not on previous podcasts, but he's a big duck hunter. I actually met him on one of the local Facebook groups. I just went out and reached out and said, hey, I started hunting a few years ago. I'm interested in duck hunting. I'm a hard worker. If anyone's willing to show me the ropes. And we connected. We've gone out hunting 2 or 3 times now. And he's a good guy. He moved to the Middle Tennessee area from Colorado, and he loves duck hunting. So we together, he also moved this, I guess, last year because it's 2025 now. He also moved last year, has family in the area, and the two of us tried to sort of figure out duck hunting in the Middle Tennessee area where we live together. Both of us are going to be going after it hard next year or next season, and hopefully I'll be able to get my first duck. So, as far as Tennessee goes, the first sort of half of this podcast is my year of firsts in Tennessee. I really want to get that first turkey. I've never gotten a turkey before. I hope I get my first duck. And I'm really hoping I get my first public land deer since 2019. Obviously, it's not my actual first, but it's been a long time. And for me, I'm going to include a doe in this. Obviously, I would love to get a buck, but when you're getting back into this type of hunting, you need to notch tags and find success. So for me, when I have that first opportunity at an adult, I don't think I'm going to shoot a fawn or anything like that. I try not to. But when I have an opportunity in the stand, whether it's a doe or a buck, if it's legal, which I think everything here is, I'm going to try and take it because I just need to get more reps in, fill more tags, and start to learn things again better. The only other thing, and I didn't put it in my top three, is because this is just something I want to do for more practice, more time outside, is I want to do small game hunting again. I haven't hunted squirrels in a long time. So I think when we're not working on the house this year, I'm going to try and get out there with the shotgun and see what I can do. If I can find some squirrels, I might pick up a squirrel call and see what I can make happen there as well. Moving on to the Western hunting side of things. I am very, very conflicted on how I want this year to go. So 2024, I did not go on a Western hunt the first time in years. Basically, I think since I started Western hunting after I went on that first elk hunt in Montana, or mule deer hunt, really, I don't think I have missed a year of going out west. But with how things were at home and the move and everything else, there was just no way I was going to be able to get a good Western hunt in, a DIY hunt. If I had money to go on a guided hunt, I probably could have, but there was no way I was going to plan and execute properly a DIY hunt and with any chance of success. I was just going to have to wing it. This year is going to be different. I am going to definitely go on a Western hunt this year. And I have two options that are at the top of my list that are I'm still, as of recording this, I still don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm running out of time because Wyoming is one of the two states and their application ends January 31st. So the two options that I am really strongly considering at this point are a general elk tag in Wyoming. There wasn't nearly as much point creep as I thought there was going to be with the changes with the different regions. So for those that don't know, Wyoming used to be general throughout the entire state. You could hunt any general unit. Now you have to apply for specific regions. So there's a west, east, and south region, essentially, is what they're broken up to. And I have 5 points in Wyoming, which should be enough to draw a general elk tag in any region. I have been wanting to go on a general elk tag hunt in Wyoming basically since I started applying in the West. You hear all of the great stories about hunting in Wyoming, and I've experienced pronghorn hunting in Wyoming, which was amazing, but I've never experienced elk hunting in Wyoming, and I really want to do that. But at the same time, I have enough points to draw a decent mule deer unit, and I've never gotten a mule deer before. I've gone on four different mule deer hunts now, and I am very conflicted on whether I want to go after mule deer again and try and get my first mule deer, or go after elk and see what I can do in Wyoming. Now, the thing is, this is the year of firsts for me, which makes me kind of want to go towards Colorado. But you never know what's going to happen with Wyoming and points and point creep. So at the same time, I have enough points right now to draw the tag, and I don't have guaranteed draw odds for the Colorado tag that I want. I think it's 82%. So very high odds, but there's a chance. Like, some people are going to apply and not draw that tag, and I could be one of them. So I'm almost of the opinion that I just need to apply for both. The other thing I'm considering is applying for New Mexico. Now, I'm very torn on that as well, because I have a high probability of drawing the other 2 tags that I want. So I don't know if New Mexico is necessary for me to apply for. The thing with New Mexico is you have to front the cost of the tag when you apply, and then you get it refunded to you. So, what I could do is apply for all 3. Apply for mule deer in New Mexico, mule deer in Colorado, and Wyoming elk. Because although the draw odds say what they are, things can change in the applications, and statistics are statistics. There's always a chance that something is going to change. So I could apply for all 3 and see what happens. I'm not sure. This is a great problem to have. I've been building my multi-state, multi-species application strategy ever since I started. I started small, and I've slowly been adding states to that list. And when you do that, you have options and opportunity for different species in different states, especially if you're open to different weapons types. Ultimately, I need to figure out what I want to do this season, but I have a lot of options, and that is the benefit to building this type of strategy. I plan on releasing a podcast dedicated to budgeting and applications and how you can do that. So that will be coming in the future. I don't know exactly when yet. I've been putting a lot of thought into that. But as far as my personal strategy goes and where I'm looking at things right now, very strongly looking at either Wyoming or Colorado for elk or mule deer. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to apply for both and see what happens. There's no way I can do both. Like, I'm only going to have time off for one, so I'm going to have to pick. And we're just going to have to see. We're just going to have to see what I draw and what I'm feeling when I get those tags, or tag if I get one. Now, I did start talking about my application strategy, and I'm adding some states. So this isn't going to be in depth. I'm just going to give you a very high level overview of every state that I'm applying or building points in. I'll try and explain a little bit. And I just want to reiterate that this is what I'm doing today. This has taken me many years to get to. I started applying for states back in 2019 and building points. So I have added slowly, and I don't have the same number of points in every state that I do. Like, Wyoming is the state I had the most points in because it was the first one. Arizona, I started after. I've drawn some tags in Arizona, so I don't have as many points to do in Wyoming. Same thing for Wyoming, actually, because I've drawn a deer and a pronghorn tag before. Anyway, starting at the top, Arizona is a must apply for me. If you hear me talk on any podcast about applications in any way, Arizona 100% must apply. You have to get the hunting license, which there is an upfront cost, but the applications themselves are cheap. And you can apply for everything, and there's basically a random chance on almost any tag for any species. So for me, I have to apply every year. If I can only apply to one state, it's probably going to be Arizona. Colorado, I am applying for mule deer. I've already talked about my confliction there, and I'm going to be buying points for elk and pronghorn. I hope to go hunting those Not over the counter for elk. Maybe one day I'll do that, but I'm trying to stick to draw tags as much as possible. Iowa white-tailed deer. I bought a point for the first time last year. I'm either going to apply or buy a point this year. I'm going to do a podcast soon with Kent Boucher, and I actually intend on talking to him about whether I should be applying or if I should just be buying points, and we'll see what can happen there. Next up is Kentucky. This one is probably not on too many people's lists, but Kentucky does have an elk population. And as far as the eastern states go, I think it's one of the ones that has the most tags available. So it's a cheap application. I started applying 2 years ago, I think. It's one of those ones that I don't ever expect to draw, but if I do, hopefully I have a good hunt. Montana, I will be buying bonus points. I'm not doing any application. I'm not picking up any preference points this year. So bonus points for elk, mule deer, and pronghorn. Nevada is a new state for me that I'm going to be adding to my list this year. I wanted to add it last year and I did not. Nevada is one where I'm going to be applying, but it's a state where the hunting is amazing, but you have very low chance of drawing, but there's a random chance. So I'm adding that into the rotation after hearing people on different podcasts that had low chances of drawing, but actually did get a tag. I'm finally going to put in and apply for Nevada and start getting them in my rotation. New Mexico, I mentioned as the possible third state I might apply for this year for mule deer. New Mexico is an interesting one because there is no point system. So you're either going to get a tag or you're not, and you have the same odds as everyone else that's applying. The downside is you have to put the cost of the tag up front. So New Mexico, depending on how many species you apply for, can actually be the most expensive state, even though the individual tags themselves aren't that expensive by comparison to, say, Wyoming or Montana. But it's a state where, depending on how likely you are to draw, it doesn't hurt to throw your name in. There's a chance that you can get something. Next up is Pennsylvania. I started applying to Pennsylvania for elk, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And it's another state where there's low chances of drawing, but they have phenomenal bulls in Pennsylvania. I do apply for the bull only tags because it's actually very difficult to get bull or cow. And if I'm going to travel up to Pennsylvania and to go hunt, I'm going to try and go after a bull. I'm not going to try and go after a cow, especially since if I draw a tag, I'm probably only ever going to get it once. It's not really worth it for me to get a cow tag, I don't think. South Dakota is another state I wanted to add last year, and I'm going to add this year. South Dakota has both mule deer and pronghorn. You can get points as a non-resident. I'm probably just going to do points this year, and maybe next year or the following, I'll be able to go on a hunt up there. But the idea of going into the plains in South Dakota is a state where I've been very interested in. I'm hoping that I'll be able to go there 2 or 3 years, go after mule deer or pronghorn, both maybe, and possibly go pheasant hunting. I see the great videos of guys going into both Dakotas and pheasant hunting, and I love the idea of that, especially after the pheasant hunt I went on in 2024 with my wife. I would love to go after some wild birds. My home state of Tennessee, we actually had our first quota hunt already start for spring turkey. So I did apply for 2 different WMA hunts that are here in the state of Tennessee. Not sure what the quality is of the quota hunts for turkeys, but I'm going to hunt public land turkeys one way or another. If I draw the quota hunt, fantastic. If I don't, I've got spots near me that I plan on going after. We also have elk and some quota tags for whitetail deer. So I'm going to be applying for all of those. I mean, can't hurt to throw your name in the hat. Whether I draw them or not, who knows? The last one for Tennessee is we have quota duck hunts. There are special blinds on specific bodies of water. I've heard that some of those are very good, and I'm going to put my name in the hat for those as well. I've never stopped applying to Texas. I started applying a few years ago. I did a great podcast with my buddy Taylor Shearer, all about applying for hunts in Texas. My strategy has changed significantly since I don't live in Texas anymore. I used to apply for a bunch of different whitetail hunts and a ton of different hunts. Now my applications are focused more on the species that I really want to get after. Specifically mule deer. I apply for every mule deer tag that you can get. I also apply for some exotics. There's some whitetail hunts where you have opportunities at exotics. I'm applying for those too, but my application strategy is much more refined than it used to be. Next up is Utah. Utah was one of the first states I applied for. I applied for a point in every single category I have: sheep points, moose points, everything. And I did that out of ignorance. I just started spending money on points, and then I looked at the draw odds. I stopped applying for a while, so I only have 1 point in Utah right now. I'm re-adding it to my application strategy this year. We're going to be getting points. I don't know if I'm going to apply for everything, but I'm going to buy points for at least the 3 big species for me, which are going to be elk, mule deer, and pronghorn. And then last but not least is Wyoming. This is the final state of my application strategy. I'm going to apply for that elk tag this year. It's going to happen. I don't think that there's a reality where I'm going to only put in for Colorado mule deer with an 82% chance of drawing. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to apply for Wyoming elk this year. And then I'm going to be buying points for deer and pronghorn. Without any doubt, I want to go back to Wyoming and hunt pronghorn again. That is it. That is all the states that I'm applying for. Admittedly, it is a lot. It's Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. It's 13 states that I'm either applying in or building points in. And hopefully I get to hunt all of those states at some point. But that is it for me. That is my 2025 hopes and dreams for this hunting season. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or shoot me a DM on Instagram at EndurHunt, EndurHunt. I would love to hear what you're applying for, what tags you hope to draw this season. I wish you the best of luck out there if you're still getting after it. I know there's still hunts going on in 2024, 2025 season. So if you're still getting after it, good luck. And may the odds be in your favor for this application season. It's already started, which is insane to think. But as I always say, time is our most valuable asset, and I don't take it for granted that you chose to spend it with me. I hope that this podcast maybe inspired you to apply more, got you considering how you should be focusing your application and point buying efforts. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you.